High Commander Zethwar of the Dominion Fleet stood before the crystalline viewing screen, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied the blue-green world spinning lazily in the void. Third planet from its modest yellow star, unremarkable in almost every conceivable way. The world's dominant species had barely crawled beyond their own gravity well, their primitive chemical rockets struggling to reach their single gray moon. "This is the species you recommend for subjugation?" Zethvar's voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of military command, his scaled hide shifting from deep purple to skeptical crimson. "They appear utterly insignificant." Strategic analyst Kethvara, her smaller form adorned with the silver insignia of the Assessment Corps, manipulated the holographic display with practiced ease. "Indeed, High Commander. Initial scans indicate a species of moderate intelligence, plagued by internal conflict and environmental mismanagement. They call themselves humans." The display shifted, showing images captured by stealth probes over the preceding orbital cycles. Cities sprawled across continental masses, their lights visible even from high orbit. Primitive aircraft carved trails through a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, while watercraft plied their oceans. Ground vehicles choked their transportation networks. "Their military capabilities?" Zethvar asked. "Laughable by Dominion standards." Kethvara brought up a comparative analysis. "Their most advanced weapons are crude fission devices, powerful by their own standards, but easily neutralized by our shielding technology. Their aerospace craft are subsonic, their naval vessels waterbound, and their ground forces rely on chemical propellants for projectile weapons." Another officer, Fleet Tactician Vornok, stepped forward. His ceremonial armor bore the marks of 17 successful subjugation campaigns. "The pattern matches our standard Category 3 assessment. Pre-contact civilizations at this technological level typically capitulate within 40 rotations of their primary world. Resistance is sporadic and ineffective." Zethvar studied the data streams flowing across his command console. The Dominion had conquered over 2,000 worlds in its inexorable expansion across this arm of the galaxy. Each conquest followed a predictable pattern: overwhelming force demonstration, rapid elimination of military infrastructure, and the installation of provisional governance. Most species surrendered after witnessing the destruction of their primary defensive installations. Those that resisted faced extinction. "What of their population distribution?" the High Commander inquired. "Approximately 8 billion individuals, spread across their primary landmasses. Interestingly, they maintain no significant off-world colonies. A few orbital platforms, some robotic probes on neighboring bodies, but nothing of strategic concern. Their species is entirely concentrated on this single world." Zethvar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "A contained population, efficient for processing and labor allocation." "There is one anomaly worth noting," Kethvara added, her tone carrying a hint of academic curiosity. "Our historical archives indicate previous survey teams examined this system approximately 200 of their years ago. At that time, these humans had not yet achieved powered flight. Their technological advancement has been unusually rapid." "Concerning?" "Unlikely. Accelerated development curves often indicate unstable civilizations. Our sociological models suggest they will either self-destruct within a few generations or plateau at a pre-stellar level. Either outcome serves our purposes." Zethvar made his decision with the casual certainty of a predator selecting prey. "Prepare the subjugation fleet. We will deploy a standard pacification force. 12 capital ships,
support vessels, and ground occupation units. I want preliminary bombardment coordinates within 3 rotations."
"As you command, High Commander."
The crystalline viewing screen flickered as the Dominion fleet began its preparations, vast warships maneuvering into formation. None of them noticed the tiny object drifting silently among the asteroid debris near the system's outer boundary. An object bearing no energy signature, powered only by passive solar collection, its sensors recording every aspect of their presence before compressing the data into a single microsecond burst aimed at the distant blue world.
Part 2. First Contact. General Marcus Chen stood in the heart of Deep Watch, the underground command center that officially did not exist. Buried beneath 2 kilometers of granite in the Colorado Rockies, the facility had been constructed over 3 decades using funds hidden within black budget allocations across 17 different government agencies. Its existence was known to fewer than 300 people on Earth. The main display showed the alien fleet in perfect resolution, captured by a network of disguised observation platforms scattered throughout the solar system. 12 primary vessels, reported Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, her fingers dancing across tactical displays, each approximately 3 kilometers in length. Power signatures consistent with previous Dominion encounters. Support craft numbering in the hundreds. Chen studied the formation with cold eyes. Time to Earth orbit? At their current approach velocity, 72 hours. The room fell silent. Around the circular command table stood the most senior military leaders from 23 nations, representatives of a secret alliance that had been preparing for this moment for over half a century.
"Ladies and gentlemen," Chen said, his voice steady, "it appears our guests have finally arrived."
The story of humanity's secret preparation began in 1947 when the first Dominion scout ship had crashed in the New Mexico desert. The technology recovered from that wreck had revolutionized human understanding of physics, propulsion, and energy generation. But more importantly, it had revealed the existence of a hostile galactic civilization that viewed emerging species as resources to be harvested. Subsequent covert contacts with Dominion probes and the desperate transmissions of subjugated species had painted a terrifying picture. The galaxy was not a place of wonder and peaceful exploration, but a hunting ground where predatory civilizations consumed the weak. The Dominion was merely the largest and most successful of these predators. Earth's governments had faced a choice: reveal the truth and risk societal collapse, or maintain the illusion of normalcy while secretly preparing for the inevitable. They chose the latter. Project Prometheus had been born, a global initiative hidden behind Cold War rivalries, economic competition, and manufactured conflicts. While the public watched rockets struggle toward orbit and celebrated the moon landing, hidden facilities around the world developed technologies that should not have existed for centuries. Fusion reactors powered by alien principles, gravity manipulation systems, materials that defied known physics, weapons capable of cracking planets. And ships. So many ships. "What's our current force readiness?" Chen asked. Admiral James Wright of the Royal Navy Space Command pulled up the display. The home fleet stands at 400 vessels, ranging from Harbinger-class dreadnoughts to Spectre-class fast attack ships. All are currently running silent in dispersed positions throughout the inner system. The reserve fleet adds another 200 vessels stationed in shielded facilities on Luna and Mars. Additionally, our automated defense platforms are online and tracking the incoming fleet. Ground forces? General Yuki Tanaka of the Unified Defense Force responded. 12 million personnel under arms, equipped with enhanced weaponry and armor. Planetary defense installations are active on every continent. Population protection protocols are ready for implementation. Chen nodded slowly. And Project Dark Horizon? The room seemed to grow colder at the mention of that name. Admiral Okonkwo spoke carefully. "Ready for deployment on your command, General, but I must note the ethical concerns previously raised."
Noted and logged, Admiral. Let us hope it does not become necessary. Chen turned to face the assembled leaders. Our strategy remains as planned. We allow them to approach, believing Earth is defenseless. We endure their initial displays of force. We wait until their fleet is committed to orbital positions, and then we show them exactly how wrong they were about humanity.
A Chinese general named Wei spoke up. "The civilian casualties during the initial phase will be minimized through pre-positioned shelters and evacuation protocols. But yes, General Wei, people will die. That is the price of the deception that will save billions more." Chen's jaw tightened. "We have spent 50 years preparing for this moment. We have built weapons they cannot imagine, ships they cannot detect, and soldiers who will not break. Now we prove that Earth is no one's hunting ground." The command center hummed with quiet activity as the countdown began. 72 hours until the Dominion arrived to claim what they believed was an easy prize. 72 hours until they learned the truth about humanity. Part 3. The Arrival. The Dominion fleet emerged from fold space precisely where their calculations predicted, hanging above the blue marble like gods preparing to pass judgment. High Commander Zethfor surveyed his domain to be with satisfaction as tactical displays populated with targeting data. "Begin standard subjugation broadcasting on all frequencies," he ordered. The communications officer complied, sending the message that had broken the will of countless species. "Inhabitants of the Third World, your civilization is now under the authority of the Eternal Dominion. Resistance is futile and will result in immediate extinction. Surrender your governments, your resources, and your population for processing. You have one planetary rotation to comply. This is your only warning." The message repeated in every language their translation matrices had decoded, blanketing the planet in the cold announcement of its conquered status. "Scanning for military response," Kethvara reported. "I'm detecting panic, scattered communications, chaotic evacuations of major population centers. Some primitive military units are mobilizing, but their force disposition suggests confusion rather than coordinated defense." Vornak studied the tactical display with veteran eyes. Exactly as expected. Their government structures appear to be fragmenting. I'm reading conflicting orders across their communication networks. Some regions are advocating surrender, while others call for resistance. Their species lacks the unity to mount an effective defense. Zethvor allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Another easy conquest to add to his record. Dispatch probe drones to assess their military installations. I want targeting solutions for their nuclear weapons facilities and command centers. We will demonstrate our power by eliminating their ability to resist before they can organize. "High Commander," a sensor technician interjected. "We are receiving a transmission from the planet. It appears to be a response to our ultimatum." "Display it." The main screen flickered, resolving into the image of a human female in military uniform. Her expression was calm, almost serene, completely at odds with the chaos their sensors detected on the surface. "Attention, Dominion Fleet," she said, her voice steady. "I am Admiral Sarah Okonkwo of the United Earth Defense Command. We have received your ultimatum and considered your demands. A slight pause. We decline. Zethwar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Brave words from a primitive. Continue the broadcast. The human admiral continued. Your species has traveled across the stars to conquer what you believe is a helpless world. You have underestimated us. This is your one opportunity to withdraw your forces and leave our system. Failure to comply within the next 6 hours will result in the complete destruction of your fleet. This is not a threat. This is a warning. The transmission ended. Laughter rippled through the command deck, a harsh, clicking sound of predatory amusement. Vornak shook his great head. The bravado of the doomed never ceases to amuse me. They have no concept of the power arrayed against them. They have no concept of the power arrayed against them. Zethvor was inclined to agree, but something about the transmission troubled him. The human's eyes had held no fear, no desperate bravado. She had spoken with the quiet confidence of someone holding superior cards. "Increase sensor sweeps," he ordered. "Full spectrum analysis of near-planetary space." "Hi, Commander?" "Indulge me." The sensor technicians complied, their instruments probing the void around Earth with increasing intensity. Zethvor watched the return scroll across his display. Nothing. Empty space, a few orbital platforms of primitive design, some communication satellites. No hidden fleet, no weapons platforms, nothing to suggest the humans possessed any capability to threaten a Dominion warship. And yet, "High Commander," Kethvara said slowly, "there is an anomaly in the sensor data." "Explain."
Several regions of space around the planet are returning readings that are too clean. No debris, no radiation, no gravitational microfluctuations. It's as if something is perfectly canceling all sensor returns in precisely defined volumes.
Zethvor felt an unfamiliar sensation crawling across his scales. Could this indicate cloaked vessels? Impossible! Cloaking technology sufficient to fool Dominion sensors requires processing power and energy generation beyond any Category 3 civilization. They would need... Kethvara stopped, her 4 eyes widening as she ran calculations. They would need technology at least equivalent to our own. Which they do not possess. Which they cannot possess, she agreed. And yet... The 6-hour deadline approached and passed. Zethvor had dismissed the human ultimatum as the desperate bluff of a doomed species. His fleet moved into optimal bombardment positions, weapons charging for the strikes that would shatter human civilization and announce their new status as Dominion property. Targeting solutions locked on major military installations and government centers, Vornak announced. Ready to commence subjugation bombardment on your command, High Commander. Zethvor prepared to give the order that would end human independence forever. The words were forming in his throat when every alarm on the command deck began screaming simultaneously. Multiple contacts emerging from stealth, sensors overwhelmed, contact count exceeding display capacity. The void around Earth came alive. Part 4. Revelation. They materialized like ghosts given form, hundreds of vessels appearing simultaneously across every quadrant of space. The smaller ones first, sleek, angular craft that bore no resemblance to the primitive rockets the Dominion had observed. They moved with impossible acceleration, streaking into formation around the Dominion fleet like wolves surrounding wounded prey. Then came the larger vessels,
Cruisers and destroyers emerged from perfect invisibility, their hulls drinking in starlight rather than reflecting it. Batteries of weapons that should not exist powered up, filling the electromagnetic spectrum with targeting radiation that made Dominion sensors wail in protest. And finally, the dreadnoughts. Zeth-Vor watched in disbelief as ships larger than his own flagship phased into reality, their mass so immense that local space itself seemed to warp around them. Each vessel was a mountain of advanced technology, bristling with weapon systems that registered as completely unknown in the Dominion database.
"This is impossible," Kethvara whispered. They are at least 2 technological tiers above initial assessment, possibly 3. These readings suggest gravitational manipulation, antimatter weapons, shield technology superior to our own." "How many?" Zeth-For demanded. 400 primary combat vessels, supporting craft in the thousands. And, High Commander, she swallowed hard, I am detecting additional signatures on the far side of the planet's moon. Many additional signatures. They have more ships in reserve than they have deployed. The communication system crackled, and the same human admiral appeared on screen. Her expression remained calm, but now there was something else in her eyes, something that might have been pity. "High Commander Zeth-For," she said, "I am required by the Geneva Conventions to offer you one final opportunity to surrender. Lower your weapons, power down your drives, and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be treated according to the standards of civilized warfare. Resistance at this point will result in the complete destruction of your fleet with no survivors. You have 60 seconds to comply." The bridge had fallen silent. Zeth-For looked at the tactical display, watching as the human fleet completed its encirclement. His 12 capital ships were surrounded by nearly 50 times their number. Every weapon system on his vessels was being painted by targeting systems that his electronic warfare suites could not shake. "This changes nothing," Vornak said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We are still Dominion warships. Our weapons are still—" "Useless," Kethvara interrupted flatly. "Analysis complete. Their shielding technology appears to operate on principles we do not understand. Our weapons will not penetrate their defenses. Meanwhile, my projections indicate their weapons will cut through our shields in seconds." Zeth-For stared at the display. 3 centuries of warfare, 17 personal victories against species that had seemed far more formidable than these humans, and now this. "How?" he asked, not expecting an answer. "How could they have developed this technology in so short a time? Our surveys 200 years ago showed them barely capable of working metal. Their public technology even now is primitive. How is this possible?" 53 years, Admiral Okonkwo said, and Zeth-For realized with a chill that she had heard his question through their compromised communication systems. That is how long humanity has known about the Dominion. That is how long we have been preparing for this moment. "You are bluffing. Your technology level was carefully curated for your observation, High Commander. Every satellite launch, every space mission, every piece of technology your probes detected, all of it was designed to make you believe exactly what you wanted to believe. That we were weak, that we were primitive, that we would be easy prey." The Admiral's expression hardened. "You have 40 seconds remaining." Zeth-For looked at his officers. He saw the same realization in their eyes that he felt in his hearts.
They had been deceived on a scale he would not have believed possible. Every assumption, every calculation, every strategic assessment, all of it had been based on a carefully constructed lie.
"If we fight," Vornak said quietly, "we die. But we die with honor."
"If we surrender," Kethvara counted, "we may live to bring intelligence of this threat back to the Dominion. They must be warned. This species is not what we believed."
Zeth-4 made his decision. "All vessels, power down weapons and drives. We surrender." The words tasted like ash, but he was a military commander before he was a warrior. Intelligence about this impossible human civilization was more valuable than a pointless death. The Dominion must learn what they faced.
"Wise choice, High Commander," Admiral Okonkwo said. "Prepare to receive boarding parties. And, High Commander, I would recommend full cooperation. Our interrogation specialists are very thorough, and we have many questions about your Dominion."
As the first human shuttles approached his flagship, Zeth-4 realized that the galaxy had just changed in ways no one in the Dominion had anticipated. Earth was not a hunting ground. It was a trap. Part 5. The Reckoning. Admiral Okonkwo watched the boarding operations from the bridge of the UES Indomitable, humanity's largest and most powerful warship. The captured Dominion vessels floated silently in formation, their crews in the process of being transferred to secure detention facilities on Luna.
"Boarding of all 12 capital ships complete," Captain Chen reported. "Minimal resistance. The Dominion crews appear to be in a state of shock."
"Can you blame them?" Okonkwo replied. "They came expecting to conquer sheep and found wolves instead." General Marcus Chen's image appeared on the communication display. Even through the secure link, she could see the weight of command pressing on him. "Admiral, the Security Council has reached a decision regarding next steps."
"I'm listening."
"The captured fleet represents an unprecedented intelligence windfall. We've already extracted preliminary navigational data from their computers. We now have the locations of 17 Dominion military bases, 43 occupied worlds, and their primary governmental center."
Okonkwo felt a cold satisfaction settle in her chest. Then the deception worked exactly as planned.
Better than planned. The Dominion clearly has no protocol for dealing with captured vessels because they've never had vessels captured before. Their data security is almost non-existent by our standards. We've obtained their complete order of battle, communication protocols, and perhaps most importantly, technical specifications for their shipboard systems.
"Anything useful?"
Their technology is approximately equivalent to what we were developing 30 years ago. We've surpassed them in almost every category. The intelligence teams are particularly interested in their fold space drive specifications. It appears we can improve our own jump capabilities by integrating some of their principles with our technology.
Okonkwo processed this information. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for war against what they believed was a technologically superior foe. They had pushed the boundaries of science and engineering to their absolute limits, developing weapons and defenses designed to counter advantages that, as it turned out, the Dominion did not actually possess. What about the occupied worlds?
General Chen's expression grew more somber. The data confirms our worst fears. The Dominion operates on a system of total subjugation. Conquered species are divided into labor castes, stripped of all cultural identity, and worked until they expire. Breeding is controlled to maintain population levels optimal for resource extraction. Any resistance is met with extinction-level force.
How many species?
Over 2,000 confirmed subjugated civilizations. Some have been under Dominion control for millennia. Others were conquered within living memory. All of them are suffering under conditions that make our own darkest historical atrocities look mild by comparison.
Okonkwo closed her eyes briefly. And our response? The Security Council has authorized Operation Dark Horizon. Chen paused. We're going to war, Admiral. Not a defensive war, not a limited engagement. We're going to dismantle the Dominion completely and liberate every single world under their control.
The words hung in the air between them. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for, but the reality of it was still staggering in scope. They were talking about a conflict that would span hundreds of light years and involve thousands of warships.
Do we have the forces? The reserve fleet is already activating. Additional construction facilities are coming online. By the time we reach the first Dominion staging area, we'll have over 1,000 combat vessels in the offensive fleet, with more launching every month. The Dominion has numerical superiority, but they're spread across 2,000 worlds. We have the advantage of concentration.
And what about High Commander Zethvor? He's been remarkably cooperative during initial questioning. Apparently, he considers it his duty to ensure the Dominion is warned about our capabilities. What he doesn't realize is that we're counting on exactly that. When we release him, and we will release him, he'll carry back intelligence that will terrify the Dominion leadership. They'll respond by consolidating their forces, pulling back from frontier regions, which will give the subjugated populations room to breathe. And time for us to arm them.
Precisely. Project Prometheus never only been about Earth's defense, Admiral. It's always been about galactic liberation.
Okonkwo nodded slowly. When do we move?
The first offensive fleet launches in 6 months. Target: the Dominion shipyards at Kethvora Prime. We're going to announce our arrival to the galaxy by destroying the largest military construction facility the Dominion possesses. After that, Chen's eyes hardened. After that, we keep fighting until every slave world is free and the Dominion exists only in history books. Part 6. The Long Game. 6 months passed like heartbeats in the great machinery of war. Humanity's offensive fleet assembled in the shadow of Mars, a congregation of vessels that would have seemed like fantasy a century before. Dreadnoughts and carriers, cruisers and destroyers, support vessels and troop transports. Over 1,000 ships bearing the hopes and fury of a species that had spent half a century preparing to fight for its right to exist. Admiral James Wright stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, the flagship of the First Offensive Fleet. Through the viewport, he could see the other vessels of his command stretching toward infinity, their running lights creating a constellation of human determination. All vessels report ready for jump, his flag captain reported. Fleet formation is optimal. Navigator confirms jump solution to Kethvora system. Wright allowed himself a moment to appreciate the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. This was not merely a military operation. It was a statement of principle that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was coming, and they were bringing justice with them. Message to all ships, he said. This is Admiral Wright. In a few minutes, we will execute the first offensive operation in humanity's galactic war of liberation. Many of you have trained your entire careers for this moment. Some of you will not return. But know this. Everything we do from this moment forward is not just for Earth. It is for every sapient being in this galaxy who has suffered under Dominion oppression. We fight for ourselves. We fight for others. And we will not stop until every chain is broken and every tyrant is brought to account.
All ships, execute jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. Reality twisted around 1,000 ships as fold space drives engaged simultaneously. The fleet vanished from human space in a ripple of distorted light, hurtling across 15 light-years in the span of seconds.
They emerged in perfect formation above Kethvora Prime. The Dominion shipyards sprawled across near orbit, a complex of construction platforms, dry docks, and support facilities that represented centuries of industrial development. Hundreds of ships in various stages of completion floated in the construction bays, from patrol craft to half-finished dreadnoughts, and utterly unprepared for what came next.
All ships, weapons free, Wright ordered calmly. Execute Attack Plan Alpha. The human fleet split into coordinated battle groups with precision that would have seemed almost choreographed to outside observers. Each group had assigned targets, sequenced firing solutions, and fallback positions, the product of years of planning and simulation. The first salvos of antimatter warheads streaked across the void, their payloads designed to overload Dominion shielding through sheer energy release. Defensive stations around the shipyards opened fire, but their targeting systems had been calibrated for threats they understood. Human vessels moved with acceleration that defied their mass, dodging fire patterns that were almost leisurely by their standards. Within minutes, the outer defensive ring was burning. Within an hour, the shipyards themselves were coming apart under concentrated bombardment. Half-built warships that would never threaten anyone again tumbled through expanding clouds of debris. Dominion fleet elements responding from inner system, the tactical officer reported. Count, 43 combat vessels inbound. Estimated intercept in 27 minutes.
Far too few and far too late, Wright observed. Task Force Omega, move to intercept. All other units, continue bombardment. I want those shipyards reduced to atoms before we leave.
Task Force Omega, consisting of 50 cruisers and destroyers, accelerated to meet the Dominion response. The engagement was short and brutal. Human vessels danced around Dominion fire, their superior speed and maneuverability allowing them to attack from angles their opponents couldn't effectively cover. Concentrated weapons fire punched through Dominion shields that had never been designed to resist antimatter bombardment, and one by one, the defending ships died. 3 hours after the battle began, the Kethvora shipyards were gone, along with every vessel that had attempted to defend them.
Secure from battle stations, Wright ordered. Navigation, plot jump to the rally point. Message to Earth Command, Kethvora shipyards destroyed. Enemy fleet elements eliminated. Minimal friendly casualties. The Dominion knows we're coming.
As the fleet prepared to jump out system, they left behind something more than wreckage. They left behind a message that would spread across the Dominion faster than any ship could travel. Earth was not weak. Earth was not prey. Earth was coming for them.
And this was only the beginning. Part 7. The Gathering Storm. High Commander Zethvor's return to Dominion space was not the triumphant homecoming he might once have imagined. He arrived aboard a human vessel, released, as promised, with a full recording of his fleet's capture and detailed intelligence about human military capabilities. The Supreme Council of the Dominion received his report with disbelief that gradually transformed into terror. The holoprojectors displayed footage of Dominion capital ships surrounded and rendered helpless, of weapons that punched through supposedly impenetrable shielding, of ships that appeared from nowhere and moved with impossible grace. "This cannot be accurate," Supreme Commander Vorthek declared. "These records must have been fabricated. A primitive species cannot have developed technology superior to our own." "It is accurate, Supreme Commander," Zethvor replied.
I witnessed it with my own eyes. They allowed me to witness it. They wanted me to bring this information back to you. Why? Because they want you to be afraid. And Supreme Commander, with respect, you should be. These humans are not what we believed. They have been preparing for war with us for longer than most of our officers have been alive. Every piece of intelligence we gathered about them was deliberately crafted to deceive us. We are not fighting a primitive species that stumbled onto our territory. We are fighting a civilization that has been planning to destroy us for half a century. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For millennia, the Dominion had been the supreme power in this region of the galaxy. They had never faced an enemy they could not overwhelm through sheer force. The idea that a species they had dismissed as barely sentient could threaten their existence was incomprehensible. And then the reports began arriving from Kethvora.
Supreme Commander, we have lost contact with the Kethvora system. All communication relays have gone dark.
Dispatch a courier. Supreme Commander, courier ships from the Kethvora route have just arrived. They report that the shipyards have been completely destroyed. The defense fleet was annihilated. Human vessels were observed jumping out of system approximately 6 hours ago.
Vorthek stared at the messenger as if he had spoken in a foreign language. The Kethvora shipyards were defended by 40 vessels. You are telling me that humans destroyed them all?
Yes, Supreme Commander. The courier ships observed the aftermath. There is nothing left. No structures, no surviving vessels, no rescue signals. Everything and everyone at Kethvora is gone. The Supreme Council erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, blame was assigned and rejected, and strategic options were debated with increasing desperation. But beneath the noise, a cold truth was settling into every mind present. The Dominion was at war with an enemy they could not understand, could not predict, and could not easily defeat. Over the following months, that truth was reinforced with terrible consistency. Human fleets appeared without warning at Dominion installations, struck with devastating force, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Supply lines were disrupted. Communication networks were compromised. Patrol routes became death sentences for their crews. And then the rebellions began. On world after world, subjugated populations rose against their Dominion masters. They struck in the night, sabotaging facilities and assassinating administrators. They disrupted production quotas and harbored resistance fighters. And when Dominion forces arrived to restore order, they found the rebels armed with weapons that bore a suspicious resemblance to human technology. They are arming the slave populations, Supreme Commander Vorthek, staring at the map of rebellions spreading across Dominion space. They are turning our own subjects against us. More than that, his intelligence chief replied. They are teaching them. Our interrogation of captured rebels reveals a consistent pattern. Human agents have been infiltrating our occupied worlds, training resistance cells and coordinating their actions. They have been doing this for months, possibly years. We never detected them because we never thought to look for them.
How is that possible? Our security protocols
are based on the assumption that no primitive species could develop personal stealth technology. That assumption, like so many others, appears to have been incorrect.
Vorthek closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his position crushing down on him. The Dominion had ruled for 3,000 years, building an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds and trillions of subjects. Now that empire was crumbling, attacked from without by a fleet they could not match, and from within by populations they had believed were broken.
What do these strategic projections indicate?
Supreme Commander, at current rates of attrition, we will lose the war within 12 years. Our shipbuilding capacity is declining as production facilities are destroyed or captured. Our manpower reserves are depleted by casualties and the growing need for occupation forces on rebellious worlds. The humans, meanwhile, appear to be increasing their military capacity with each passing month.
Can we negotiate?
We have attempted to open diplomatic channels. The humans have a single demand: complete and unconditional surrender, followed by reparations to all subjugated species and trials for crimes against sapiens. They will not negotiate terms. Vorthek looked at the map again, at the spreading red of rebellion and the encroaching blue of human advancement. Somewhere out there, a species he had once dismissed as insignificant was systematically dismantling everything the Dominion had built. "Then we will fight," he said. "Consolidate our forces. Abandon the outer territories. We will draw them into a decisive engagement and crush them with overwhelming numbers. They cannot defeat the full might of the Dominion in open battle." It was the last hope of a dying empire, and everyone in the room knew it. Part 8. The Battle of Vorthan. The Dominion chose their stand at Vorthon, a system of strategic importance at the heart of their remaining territory. They gathered every available vessel, over 3,000 warships, the largest fleet assembled in Dominion history. Supply lines were secured, defensive installations were reinforced, and every advantage of preparation and fortification was exploited. And then they waited. The human fleet arrived 1 month later. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, now leading the combined offensive forces of the United Earth Defense Command. Around her vessel, 1,500 human warships held formation, numerically inferior to the Dominion fleet by half, but representing the most advanced military technology in the known galaxy. "Dominion fleet is holding position around the third planet," her tactical officer reported. "They've established layered defensive formations. Significant orbital installations and ground-based weapons platforms detected." Okonkwo studied the display with experienced eyes. "They've learned from their mistakes. This is a prepared defense, not the kind of overconfident deployment we've been facing. They know they can't match us ship for ship, so they're trying to even the odds with fortifications and numbers." "Admiral, do we have orders to engage?" "We do, but not yet." She keyed her communication console. "All vessels, begin Phase 1 operations." For the next 3 hours, the human fleet did not advance. Instead, they executed a carefully choreographed series of maneuvers, probing the Dominion defenses, testing response times, and mapping the layout of their formations. Dominion commanders, expecting an immediate assault, grew increasingly nervous as the humans refused to commit. Then the reinforcements arrived. Fold space portals opened behind the human fleet, disgorging wave after wave of fresh vessels. Ships that had been positioned in systems throughout conquered territory waiting for this moment. The human fleet grew from 1,500 to 3,000, and then to 4,000, and still they kept coming. "Final count," Okonkwo's tactical officer reported, his voice slightly awed. 6,200 combat vessels. Full carrier group deployment complete. Automated weapons platforms entering formation. The Dominion commanders, watching from across the void, felt their hearts sink. They had gathered every ship they could spare, stripping defenses across their remaining territory, gambling everything on this single confrontation. And the humans had simply brought more. "Open a channel to the Dominion fleet," Okonkwo ordered. Supreme Commander Vorthek appeared on her screen, his scales gray with stress. You will not find us easy prey, human. We are prepared to die defending our civilization.
I'm not asking you to die, Supreme Commander. I'm asking you to surrender. You have seen what we can do. You know you cannot win this battle. Every ship you lose here is a ship that cannot evacuate civilians when your worlds fall. Every soldier who dies is a family that loses a father or mother. End this. Accept defeat. Allow us to bring justice and reconstruction to the species your people have oppressed.
And what of the Dominion? What of our culture, our civilization, our 3,000 years of history? Your history of conquest and slavery? That history ends today, one way or another. What comes next is up to you. You can be part of the new galactic order we're building, or you can be destroyed by it, but you cannot stop it.
Vorthek was silent for a long moment. Behind him, Okonkwo could see other Dominion officers, their faces reflecting the impossible choice before them.
I cannot surrender, Vorthek said finally. Even if I wished to, my people would not accept it. We are Dominion. We do not yield. Then you will die, and so will your people. And in the end, the result will be the same, except more beings will have suffered for your pride. Okonkwo's voice carried no anger, only a profound sadness. I'm sorry, Supreme Commander. You had a chance to choose another path. All ships, begin attack. The Battle of Vorthen lasted 14 hours. Human vessels advanced in coordinated waves, their superior shielding and weapons allowing them to endure fire that would have destroyed Dominion ships instantly. The Dominion fought with the desperation of a cornered animal, throwing everything they had at the invaders. But it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. One by one, Dominion capital ships died in expanding spheres of antimatter fire. Defensive installations were neutralized by precision strikes. Ground-based weapons platforms were silenced by atmospheric entry weapons that the Dominion had never developed counters for. By the 8th hour, the Dominion fleet had been reduced by half. By the 12th hour, only scattered remnants remained. Supreme Commander Vorthek died on the bridge of his flagship when human fire finally overwhelmed his shields, ending 3,000 years of Dominion rule in a flash of nuclear fire. When the battle ended, the human fleet held the field. The greatest military force the Dominion had ever assembled had been destroyed, and with it, any hope of stopping humanity's advance. All ships, secure from battle stations, Okonkwo ordered, her voice weary but steady. Begin rescue operations for Dominion survivors. Prepare for planetary occupation of the Vorthan system. She paused. And send word to Earth Command. The Battle of Vorthan is concluded. Dominion military capability effectively neutralized. Proceeding with liberation operations. Across the void, the wreckage of a defeated empire tumbled silently through space, bearing witness to the end of an era. Part 9. Liberation. The fall of the Dominion proper was not the end of humanity's mission. It was the beginning of a far more complex challenge. Over 2,000 worlds had been held under Dominion control, their populations conditioned by generations of slavery to a reality they had never chosen. Liberating them required more than military force. It required a complete reconstruction of societies that had forgotten what freedom meant. The first world to be fully liberated was Cathara, home to a species called the Velkari. They had been conquered 400 years before, their culture systematically suppressed, their population reduced to a labor caste serving Dominion agricultural operations.
Colonel Elena Martinez led the liberation force, her troops fanning out across the planet's surface while naval vessels secured orbit above. What they found broke even hardened soldiers' hearts. The Velkari were a graceful, slender species with luminous silver skin and large, dark eyes that reflected centuries of suffering. They had been bred for labor. Their natural lifespan extended through genetic modification to maximize their productive years. They worked from before sunrise until after sunset, sustained by barely adequate nutrition, their every movement monitored by Dominion overseers. When the human troops arrived, the Velkari did not understand what was happening. They had no concept of liberation, because they had no memory of freedom. They simply stood silently, waiting for new masters to give them orders. Lieutenant Chen, approach the nearest population center and begin contact protocols, Martinez ordered, watching through drone feeds as her team spread out. Lieutenant James Chen, a linguist and first contact specialist, walked slowly toward a group of Velkari laborers who had stopped their work to watch the strange newcomers. He held up empty hands, a universal gesture of peaceful intent. "We are not here to harm you," he said, his translator converting the words to the Velkari trade dialect. "We are here to set you free." The Velkari looked at each other in confusion. One of them, older than the rest, stepped forward hesitantly. "Free?" The word came out as a question, as if its meaning had been lost to time. "We do not understand. Who will tell us what to do? Who will provide for us?" Chen felt tears prickling at his eyes, but he kept his voice steady. "You will tell yourselves what to do. You will provide for yourselves. You will make your own choices and live your own lives. That is what freedom means." The old Velkari stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, something changed in those dark, luminous eyes. A flicker of light that might have been hope or might have been terror at the enormity of what was being offered. "We do not remember how." "Then we will help you remember. That is why we are here." The liberation of Cathara took 3 years. Human advisors worked alongside Velkari communities, teaching them to govern themselves, to grow food for their own consumption rather than Dominion quotas, to build homes they could call their own. It was slow, painstaking work, complicated by cultural trauma that ran generations deep. But gradually, the Velkari began to change. Children who had never known anything but servitude grew up learning to read and write, to question and dream. Young adults discovered talents for art, for music, for science, skills the Dominion had suppressed as unproductive. Elders shared fragments of pre-conquest culture that had been preserved in secret, songs and stories that connected the Velkari to a heritage they had nearly forgotten. Similar scenes played out across the former Dominion territory. Each world had its own challenges, its own wounds that required individual attention. Some species had been so thoroughly broken that they could not conceive of self-determination. Others had maintained hidden resistance movements for centuries and required only weapons and opportunity to reclaim their independence. And everywhere humanity went, they left behind not colonies or dependencies, but sovereign worlds equipped with the technology and knowledge to defend themselves. Treaties of mutual defense bound the liberated species together, creating a network of allies that would eventually become something new in galactic history, a genuine community of equals. Part 10. The New Order. 20 years after the Battle of Vorthan, representatives from over 400 species gathered on Earth for the founding of the Galactic Federation. The ceremony was held in the rebuilt city of Geneva, where ancient human traditions of diplomacy and international law had first been codified. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, now in her 70s but still sharp as the weapons she had once commanded, gave the opening address. 20 years ago, humanity emerged from a cocoon of deliberate deception to face a galaxy we knew was hostile. We had been watching the stars for 50 years before that, preparing for a war we hoped would never come, but knew we could not afford to lose. When that war arrived, we fought not just for ourselves, but for every sapient being in this part of the galaxy who had been told they were nothing but resources to be exploited. She paused, looking out at the assembled delegates. Hundreds of species with wildly different physiologies, many of them liberated from centuries of servitude. The Dominion believed that power came from conquest, that strength meant the ability to subjugate others. They were wrong. True power comes from cooperation. True strength lies in the relationships we build with those who share our values. Today, we establish not an empire, but a partnership. A federation of equals, bound together by common principles rather than common masters. General Marcus Chen, now frail with age, but still carrying the weight of the office he had held for decades, spoke next. Humanity came to the stars with a chip on our shoulder. We knew we had been marked for subjugation, and we refused to accept that fate. But along the way, we learned that our struggle was not unique. Countless species across this galaxy had faced the same choice: submission or extinction. Many of them submitted. Many were destroyed. But the desire for freedom never truly died. He looked at a delegation of Velkari, their silver skin gleaming in the sunlight streaming through the assembly hall's windows. What we learned from those we liberated humbled us. The capacity for hope, for resistance, for the dream of something better, these are not uniquely human traits. They are the common heritage of all sapient life. We share them. And today, we formalize that sharing in the creation of something that will outlast all of us. The Federation Charter was signed that day by representatives of every member world. It established principles that the Dominion would have found incomprehensible: the sanctity of individual liberty, the right of self-determination, the prohibition of slavery in all its forms, and the collective obligation to defend any member world against aggression. But perhaps the most significant provision was the simplest: an acknowledgement that no species had the right to subjugate another, that the diversity of galactic civilization was a source of strength, not weakness, that different ways of being were to be celebrated, not suppressed. The Dominion's surviving members, those who had surrendered rather than fight to the death, watched from detention as the Federation formed. Some of them struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. They had been raised to believe that the only relationship between species was predator and prey, master and slave. The idea that thousands of worlds could cooperate as equals seemed impossible. "They will fall eventually," one detained former commander muttered to another. "These alliances never last. They will tear themselves apart, and then we will rise again." But decades passed, and the Federation only grew stronger. New species joined, some discovered in distant regions of the galaxy, others emerging from the shadows where they had hidden for generations. Trade routes connected thousands of worlds. Scientific collaborations advanced technology at a pace neither humans nor any single species could have achieved alone. Cultural exchange created new forms of art, music, and philosophy that blended the best of multiple traditions. And at the heart of it all, humanity. Once dismissed as primitive, once marked for subjugation, once believed to be nothing but future slaves, had become something else entirely. They were the liberators, the bridge builders, the species that had fought for the right to exist, and then fought again for everyone else who deserved the same. Epilogue: The Long View. 2 centuries after the founding of the Galactic Federation, a human historian named Dr. Maya Okonkwo, a distant descendant of the admiral who had commanded the fleet that shattered the Dominion, published a comprehensive history of humanity's galactic emergence. She called it From the Shadows: How Humanity Deceived an Empire and Freed a Galaxy. In the book's final chapter, she reflected on what her species had accomplished. When our ancestors looked up at the stars, they wondered if they were alone. When they discovered they were not, they faced a terrible truth. The universe was not a welcoming place. Those who came before us had 2 choices: reveal our discovery and risk societal collapse, or hide it while preparing for the inevitable. They chose deception on a scale never before attempted by any civilization. For 50 years, while the public watched primitive rockets struggle toward orbit, hidden programs developed technologies that should not have existed for centuries. While the world argued about climate change and political divisions, secret alliances were forged that crossed every national boundary. While the Dominion watched and laughed at our apparent weakness, we were building a fleet that would darken their skies.
The Dominion mistook our discretion for incapacity, our patience for helplessness, our preparation for technological stagnation. They believed what they wanted to believe, that we were easy prey, just another species to be harvested. They never considered that their own arrogance might be their weakness, or that a species they dismissed as primitive might be smart enough to use that dismissal against them.
But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of humanity's emergence is not what we destroyed, but what we built afterward. We could have become conquerors ourselves. Having defeated the Dominion, we possessed the technology and military force to establish our own empire over the ruins. Some argued we should. After all, we had earned the right through our sacrifice and our victory. Instead, we chose a different path. We chose to liberate rather than subjugate, to educate rather than exploit, to build partnerships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchies based on power. The Galactic Federation exists today not because humanity imposed it, but because we offered it, and thousands of species accepted. There are those who say humanity is special, that something about our nature allowed us to accomplish what no other species could have. I think that misses the point. What makes humanity noteworthy is not any inherent superiority, but the circumstances that shaped us. We evolved on a world where cooperation was necessary for survival, where the ability to deceive predators and competitors was as valuable as strength or speed. We learned to play the long game because our environment demanded it. When we faced the stars, we applied those same skills on a galactic scale. We pretended to be weak while becoming strong. We hid our capabilities until the moment of maximum advantage. We sacrificed short-term glory for long-term victory. And when victory came, we remembered that we had once been prey ourselves. And we chose to be something better than those who had hunted us. The Dominion believed that the galaxy belonged to the strong, that power was the only currency that mattered. They were wrong. The galaxy belongs to those who can build something worth defending: relationships, communities, civilizations based on more than fear. Strength alone is brittle. It breaks when challenged by those with nothing to lose. The Federation has endured because it offers something the Dominion never could: a reason for people to fight, not because they must, but because they choose to. 2 centuries have passed since our emergence. Thousands of species thrive across hundreds of thousands of worlds, connected by trade and treaty, and the shared experience of surviving an age of empire. Wars still occur. The galaxy is too vast and too diverse for perpetual peace, but they are contained, resolved through mechanisms that preserve the broader community. Threats still arise.
New predatory civilizations, cosmic disasters, the endless challenges of existence. But they are met by a unified response that draws on the strengths of all member worlds.
And at the heart of it all, humans continue to serve, not as rulers or overlords, but as one voice among many. We have not forgotten our history, the centuries of slavery our ancestors endured, the generations of warfare that finally freed us, the impossible gamble that brought us to the stars. But we have also learned that history is not destiny. The past informs us without defining us.
When the Dominion looked at Earth, they saw weakness. They saw a species barely capable of leaving their own gravity well, torn by internal conflicts, squandering their resources in petty disputes. They saw prey. They could not have been more wrong. What they saw was a mask, carefully crafted to make them believe exactly what they wanted to believe. Behind that mask was a civilization of 7 billion people who had spent half a century preparing for the moment when the monsters came. Behind that mask were weapons and ships and soldiers who had trained for a war that most of their fellow humans never knew was coming. Behind that mask was a determination that the Dominion could not have understood because they had never experienced it. The absolute refusal to be anyone's prey. Humanity emerged from the shadows not because we were the strongest species in the galaxy, but because we were the ones who understood that strength is measured not in weapons, but in will. The Dominion had the weapons to destroy us. They lacked the will to believe we could resist. In the end, that was enough. On the bridge of the USS Legacy, the newest flagship of the Federation fleet, Captain James Chen, named for a distant ancestor who had been among the first to make contact with liberated species, looked out at the stars. 200 years of history stretched behind him. 200 years of struggle and sacrifice, of liberation and reconstruction. His species had traveled from a single world to a galaxy of allies, from prey marked for subjugation to partners in the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. And still, the stars beckoned. "Captain," his first officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the exploration fleet in the Andromeda sector. They've made contact with a new species, apparently quite advanced, and interested in opening diplomatic relations." Chen smiled. "Set course for Andromeda sector. Let's go meet our new neighbors." The human warship, one of thousands now serving the Federation, turned toward the endless frontier and accelerated into the infinite dark. Behind it, the light of 1,000,000 worlds shone with the promise of a future that the Dominion would have found impossible. They had mistook Earth as weak. They could not have been more wrong. And now, 2 centuries later, the species they had dismissed as primitive continued to reach for the stars, building bridges to worlds and peoples the Dominion had never imagined. That was humanity's true legacy. Not conquest, not empire, but the unshakable belief that every sentient being deserved to be free, and the willingness to fight for it. The galaxy belonged to no one. And that was exactly how it should be. The end.